Good evening, ghoulies and ghosties and long-leggedy beasties. This is Alex coming at you from the underworld, and welcome back to another episode of. Well, it is officially 2025. I hope everyone is having a good new year. As for myself, Carrie and I ended up celebrating the new year by doing absolutely nothing. So hopefully this year will be a little bit more relaxed for us, as 2024 was a year that I am glad to see go. And unfortunately, I did wake up to some bad news in regards to the mass killing that happened in New Orleans. And I'm very grateful that my loved ones are safe and okay. But for those who were not so lucky, I really hope you can find peace and closure. I know that's easier said than done, but just know that I'm putting positive energies out there for you, and I'm hoping that you're able to heal. But aside from that, this is the continuation of the Christmas book haul that I received for 2024. And in this video, I plan to knock out all of the rest of the books I received, as well as some books that I had received by mail from Secret Santa. So, without further ado, these are the titles that I have to look forward to reading. To start with, I'm going to show off some classics I received, and first up is The Witches of Eastwick by John Updike. Now, this is one of those situations where I've seen the movie a million times and I've absolutely adored the movie, but I've never read the book. As a matter of fact, I've never even heard anyone speak about the book, even though I know it has existed for quite some time. And I'm really excited to start this because I've never read the work of Updike before, and I'm really interested to see what his style is like. Now, as far as this being compared to the movie, I imagine there will be some differences, and I think it does have the potential to be darker than what was shown on screen. I think this will be really informative. I think it'll be a good character study, and it feels like this could easily be suitable for when the weather turns a little cooler, so I'm thinking maybe autumn. Next up is a book by an author who I thoroughly enjoy, which I've only read one book by him, but that experience was everything I had hoped for, which this is the author Michael McDowell. And the book that I had read was The Elementals, which was absolutely creepy and campy at the same time. Also, it did have a little dark humor to it, so I'm expecting to see the same thing with this book. But next up is Wicked Stepmother by Michael McDowell and Dennis Schuetz. I hope I'm saying his last name correctly. But this is a book I really haven't heard anything about, and it says on the back, Daddy's dead, now to take care of the children. Seducing a proper Bostonian was easy. Making him die of a heart attack a week after the wedding was hardly any trouble at all. Now she has money, social status, everything she has cunningly schemed to get since she was a poor little girl. Everything except the Brookline mansion and the multi-million-dollar trust fund left to the three children. But what wicked stepmother couldn't get rid of three children? Jonathan, too smart for his own good and suspicious about his father's death, has to be the first to go. Then there's pretty, spoiled Verity, hooked on cocaine and perpetually drunk, who'd ask any questions if she died suddenly. And clever Cassandra, just out of college and beginning a career as a literary editor, will simply have to get over being dead. Wicked Stepmother, published in 1983, is the second of the camp classics written by Michael McDowell, co-author of Beetlejuice and The Nightmare Before Christmas. In collaboration with Dennis Schuetz, 5 of McDowell's classic horror novels are also available from Valancourt. So yeah, it did mention campy, and I am very excited for that. It feels like this could be a somewhat light-hearted read that I could chuckle my way through after I read something extremely heavy. Up next is a book by another author who I was introduced to a few years ago, but unfortunately, he only has a few books out due to him dying at an early age. But that, of course, is Michael Talbot. And the first time I ever read him was when my good online friend Hanny and I read The Delicate Dependency, which is his vampire novel. And in my opinion, that book is criminally underrated because it is so rich with its style. And if you are a lover of classic vampire stories, it feels like it's a good throwback to stories like Carmilla, and it's so very rich. But by the time Hanny and I had finished reading that book, we could no longer trust the actions of the protagonist because the book is nothing but this whole gaslighting fiasco. And by the time you get to the end of it, you honestly just cannot trust anyone because you feel just as manipulated as the characters. But next up, I have Night Things. The back says, built by a madwoman during the Victorian era. Lake House is a 160-room mansion in the Adirondacks, with stairways that lead nowhere, bizarre rooms designed to distort the senses, endless series of maze-like halls, and a century-long history of violent deaths. Lauren Montgomery, her son Garrett, and her new rock star husband Stephen Ransom have just arrived at Lake House, anticipating a long and relaxing summer. But what they don't know is that their rental home is actually a labyrinth puzzle at whose center lurks something unspeakably evil. Okay, this could easily have some Greek mythology tied to it, especially if there's like a minotaur at the center of the maze. I'm really excited to see what this author can do with a setting that's more contemporary, as The Delicate Dependency was set during the Victorian era. So, considering this was written in about the 80s, I believe, I think that we will definitely have some colorful 80s characters. It goes further on the back by saying, an inventive and chilling haunted house story in the vein of Mark Z. Danielewski's House of Leaves. Michael Talbot's Night Things, which was published in 1988, is a page-turning mixture of horror and fantasy from the author of The Delicate Dependency. So, I'm a huge fan of Mark Z. Danielewski's House of Leaves, and to see the two books be compared, I know I am in for a treat with this. Next up is a book that's a part of the Paperback from Hell series, which this is The Abyss by Jer Cunningham. I think I'm saying that correct. I don't know. As I've said before, I suck at pronouncing names. But on the back, it reads, from the deepest mine in Tennessee entered the darkest pit of hell. Well, I'll go in and say right now, that was a good choice for the author to put the Gate of Hell in Tennessee because, you know what? The South is hot as hell when it comes down to the summer months. And since Tennessee really isn't that far away from me, I feel like I could easily take a weekend getaway and enjoy this book up in the mountains of Tennessee, so I could totally be in my element. So this could easily be something for a little weekend getaway between Carrie and myself. But it continues forward by saying, it is the deepest coal mine ever created. But when the miners dig too far, they violate the Earth's most ancient and closely guarded secret. Now blood flows from faucets, and huge thorns tear the ground apart. Now grotesque, half-seen creatures terrorize the town as the stench of sulfur fills the air. Now the legions of hell itself raise their unspeakable dominion over heaven and earth from the abyss. Okay, so I've never read this author before. I really don't know what to expect here, but the demon on the front of this book looks really, really creepy and creative. I'm hoping that we get some very diverse demons with this. For some reason, I've always enjoyed stories that take place around demonic entities simply because I feel like they can really be creative in their design and their abilities. So I don't know if the demons in this are just complete figments of the author's imagination or if he actually used some demons that are known about in lore. And I think a weekend getaway to Tennessee would be the absolutely perfect opportunity to read this. Next up is a book that's really classified to be a mystery, but if it's anything like the made for TV adaptation that I saw, this will be scary as hell. But this is Bad Ronald by Jack Vance. Now, I recently saw the made for TV movie a couple of years ago, and I was really, really impressed by it. So I definitely wanted to read the book after I saw the movie because I had no idea it was based on a book. But this was definitely high on my Christmas wish list. It says on the back, 17-year-old Ronald Wilby is an introverted young man with a protective single mother. Walking home one evening, Ronald stumbles into young Carol Matthews. In the encounter, Carol ends up assaulted and dead. Ronald leaves his jacket at the scene. Elaine Wilby is convinced that Carol's death was an accident and converts a small part of their old house into a secret room where Ronald must hide, until she saves enough money that they can move and start over. She tells everyone that her son ran away. The plan works until Miss Wilby is taken by a sudden illness. The house is sold to another family, a family with 3 pretty daughters. Lurking behind the walls, Ronald is tempted more than he can bear. So, that's the gist of everything. I kind of feel like the synopsis gave away a little too much, but of course it doesn't tell you how everything plays out or how it ends. So there is still some wiggle room for there to be suspense and mystery. Personally, this story, well, at least the movie, played on a fear of mine, and I believe that the book will play on that same fear, which is the idea of living in a house while thinking that you are absolutely alone and secure, but the danger is coming from within those very walls in which you're living. So I feel like this will definitely be fun. I think that regardless of having seen the movie, it will still do its job and give me the willies. Moving away from the classics, I have Brian Evenson's Father of Lies. Now, previously, I've read a few short stories by this author, and I was really impressed, which, after having read those stories, that's what led me to asking for his books. And this is going to be a full lengther. There's no short fiction in it, from what I believe. And it says on the back, Provost Eldon Folks may be a sexual criminal. His therapist isn't sure, and his church is determined to protect against its reputation. Father of Lies is Evenson's fable of power, paranoia, and the dangers of blind obedience, and a terrifying vision of how far institutions will go to protect themselves against the innocents who may be their victims. This feels like it's going to be full of trigger warnings and that it's going to be disturbing, but at the same time, it feels like it's going to touch on a subject that's very relevant to our society. And with the praise that this book is given, it is listed as being disturbing. There is some praise from Publishers Weekly that says, Evenson's scary fictional treatment of church hypocrisy has the feeling of a reasoned attack on blind religious obedience. Yeah, this feels like it's going to be a heavy book. It feels like it's going to be an important book, and I will definitely need to be in the right mindset to read this. Next up is a book by an author who I recently fell in love with. As a matter of fact, I still need to review her book, The Winter People. But that, of course, is Jennifer McMahon and her novel, My Darling Girl. So I recently read The Winter People in December, and I was so blown away by it that I added all of her books to my wish list. And I have to say, The Winter People scared the ever-loving living hell out of me. Like, there were moments where I just felt like there was someone coming up from behind me, and I get chills just thinking about what she did in that book. But it was absolutely phenomenal. And with this one, I have no idea what to expect. There is some praise on the back from Nick Cutter, which I love the work of Nick Cutter. And also there's some praise by Paul Tremblay, which I absolutely loved his book, The Cabin at the End of the World. As a matter of fact, Nick Cutter's book, The Troop, is a book that I absolutely loved as well. So those are two authors who have scared me in the past, and considering that The Winter People scared the hell out of me as much as it did, I have high hopes for this book. And the synopsis reads, Allison O'Connor has a picture-perfect family life in small-town Vermont with her husband Mark and their two daughters, the rebellious teenage Izzy and the precocious elementary schooler Olivia. Everyone is busily putting up holiday decorations around the house when Allison gets the call. Mavis, her estranged mother, has been diagnosed with cancer and has only 2 weeks to live. She wants to spend her remaining days with her daughter, son-in-law, and 2 granddaughters. Allison grew up with her mother's alcoholism and violent abuse and has little desire to relive those traumatic memories. But she reluctantly agrees to Mavis's last request, hoping that they both might be able to heal and have the relationship she's always dreamed of. But when mysterious, increasingly terrifying things start to happen upon Mavis's arrival, Allison begins to wonder if something far more sinister is at play. And as her mother's final days spiral into a nightmare, she must decide just how far she's willing to go to protect her family. Y'all, this is going to scare the shit out of me. Next up is a book and author that I really know nothing about, and that is Graveyard Shift by M.L. Rio. And this is a Barnes & Noble exclusive, which says it includes special content. Not certain what that special content is, maybe an expansion on the story. Don't really know. But it says, 5 night shift workers, an ancient cemetery, an open grave. Every night in the college's ancient cemetery, 5 people cross paths as they work the late shift. A bartender, a rideshare driver, a hotel receptionist, the unofficial steward of the derelict church that looms over them, and the editor-in-chief of the college paper, always in search of a story. One dark October evening in the defunct churchyard, they find a hole that wasn't there before, a fresh open grave where no grave should be, but who dug it, and for whom? Oh, all right. That sounds like it's going to be very interesting. I feel like this could easily be a book that has a lot of red herrings and a lot of twists and turns, even though it is a short book. I am happy to hear that it takes place in October, and I feel like this is going to be at the top of my TBR list for the Halloween reads for 2025. Following that is an author who I definitely should have read by now. I've been collecting his books and I need to read something of his. But that is Eric LaRocca and his book, We Can Never Leave This Place. So I know he specializes in disturbing literature and splatterpunk, and this book says, when you're given a gift, something else gets taken away. A precocious young girl with an unusual imagination is sent on an odyssey into the depths of depravity. After her father dies violently, young Mara is surprised to find her mother welcoming a new guest into their home, claiming that he will protect them from the world of devastation and destruction outside their door. A grotesque and thrilling dark fantasy, We Can Never Leave This Place is a harrowing portrait of inherited grief and familial trauma. Personally, I think this book is going to pack a punch, and yeah, it's thin, but at the same time, I've learned books of this size can easily feel like it's a 600-page novel as far as packing in the subjects and themes and the character development. So I think this will definitely be a lot more than what appears to be. I think that looking at it, a lot of people will just assume that this is a quick surface read, but I really feel like this is going to pack in a lot of information, and I believe it's going to be very heavy. Next up is an author who I've been meaning to read more of, but I just haven't done it yet. Currently, I've read his book Krampus and his book The Child Thief, which I thoroughly enjoyed both of those, but I did enjoy Krampus a little bit more because The Child Thief seemed a little too hardcore fantasy. But I have his book, Evil in Me. And what I love about his work is you can tell that he's done his research and he knows about the subjects that he's writing about. At the same time, he does bend them to benefit his storyline. And also, his artwork is what's featured on the front of this book, as well as the inside, which that's what you get with any Brahm book that you purchase. Because, from my understanding, he started off as an artist and then he went over into storytelling, which these are some of the images that he created. And sometimes the images can be really whimsical, and in this book, though, it appears that the images are all very grotesque and ghastly, which I am not complaining. But I think this will definitely fall into the subcategory of heavy metal horror or rock and roll horror, whatever you want to call it. And it says, aspiring musician Ruby Tucker has had enough of her small rural town and dysfunctional family, but a falling out over her best friend and bandmate has killed her dreams of escaping and making it big in the 80s Atlanta punk scene. When Ruby helps her eccentric neighbor organize his religious relics, an ancient ring clamps down on her finger, possessing her with the spirit of a bloodthirsty demon. There's no exorcising it until hundreds of people chant a spell to set Ruby free. And what's worse, the ring is a beacon for evil, drawing a monstrous mob straight to Ruby, hungry for her flesh. If Ruby can get her band back together, she has a shot at salvation. It's time for her to face the music and put her whole soul into a song, one powerful enough to raise some hell. So I feel like this will be a good throwback to the 1980s heavy metal horror subgenre, which I've always been a fan of those kinds of movies, which for those of you who might be unfamiliar with that subgenre, good examples are the 1980s Trick or Treat that had Ozzy Osbourne and Gene Simmons in it. Also, there's Monster Dog that featured Alice Cooper, and a few other films such as Rocktober Blood, Black Roses, Hack-O-Lantern Jack, Shock 'em Dead. Slaughterhouse Rock is another one that comes to mind. I think that had like Tony Basil in it. It was just crazy. But I really do love that subgenre. It can be cheesy. I really don't expect for this to be cheesy because out of the books I've read by this author, he remains fairly serious with his storyline. Next up is a book that is absolutely adorable. Like the aesthetic of it, I love it. This is Home is Where the Bodies Are by Geneva Rose. And what's so cool about this is it looks like a VHS cover. And the book itself, a VHS tape. So that is really cool. I've never read this author before, so I really don't know what to expect of her style. But it says on the back, after their mother passes, three estranged siblings reunite to sort out her estate. Beth, the oldest, never left home. She stayed with her mom, caring for her until the very end. Nicole, the middle child, has been kept at arm's length due to her ongoing battle with a serious drug addiction. Michael, the youngest, lives out of state and hasn't been back to their small Wisconsin town since their father ran out on them 7 years before. While going through their parents' belongings, the siblings stumble upon a collection of home videos and decide to revisit those happier memories. However, the nostalgia is cut short when one of the VHS tapes reveal a night back in 1999 that none of them have any recollection of. On screen, their father appears covered in blood. What follows is a dead body and a pact between their parents to get rid of it before the video abruptly ends. Beth, Nicole, and Michael must now decide whether to leave the past in the past or uncover the dark secret their mother took to her grave. All right, so This feels like another book that's going to have a lot of red herrings in it, a lot of twists and turns. And as I've confessed before, I suck at figuring out twists and turns. I have friends and family who are like, oh yeah, I saw that coming, where I'm like, I had no clue whatsoever. The killer himself could have said, hey, I am the killer. And I would have been like, nah, he's bluffing. So, yeah, it really sucks when it comes down to me figuring things out. But at the same time, I'm really kind of happy about that because when the twist is revealed, I really am thrown back by it and I feel like I can enjoy it a lot more. Up next is a book that I feel was purchased for me because everyone who's close to me knows I love the author Tanana Reeve Dew. And she gave this book her kiss of approval, so I feel like with her approving it, it's going to be good. Which this is Johnny Compton's Devils Kill Devils. And I have another one of his books, which is called The Spite House. I still need to read that, hopefully sooner than later. I really enjoyed the cover of that, and to be honest, I enjoy this cover as well. There's something about it that reminds me of a childhood boogeyman, and to be honest, like even on the back, we have some claw-like hands that remind me of the hands off of Coraline, but I don't believe this is intended for young adults. But this book is about Sarita has been watched over by a guardian angel her entire life. She calls him Angelo and keeps him a secret. But some secrets won't stay hidden. When Angelo murders someone she loves, Sarita begins to see what horrors have really been lurking in the shadows surrounding her, and she will have to embrace the evil within if she hopes to make it out alive. Johnny Compton, author of the Bram Stoker nominated The Spite House, takes you on a terrifying race of one woman against the hordes of hell. All right. I am a sucker for good versus evil, and I feel this book will definitely deliver. Up next is an author who I really wanted to meet last year because he was in Jackson, Mississippi signing books, but unfortunately, life just did not work out for me at that time. And that is Gabino Iglesias and his book, House of Bone and Rain. I really don't know what to expect from this author, although I have noticed he has quite a few books that have really intriguing titles. But this says, Stand by me with a haunted obsidian dark heart. A group of young men seek vengeance after one of their mothers is murdered in a Puerto Rican slum. For childhood friends Gabe, Xavier, Tavo, Paul, and Bimbo, death has always been close. Hurricanes, car accidents, gang violence, suicide. Estamos rodeos de fantasmas. I hope I'm saying that right. I failed Spanish class. My tongue just won't work with me sometimes. But this was Gabe's grandmother's refrain, which translates into We are surrounded by ghosts. But this time is different. Bimbo's mom has been shot dead. We're going to kill the motherfuckers who killed her, Bimbo swears, and they all agree. Feral with grief, Bimbo has become unrecognizable, taking no prisoners in his search for names. Soon, they learn Maria was gunned down by guys working for the drug kingpin of Puerto Rico. No one has ever gone up against him and survived. As the boys strategize, a storm gathers far from the coast. Hurricanes are known to carry evil spirits in their currents and bring them ashore, spirits that impose their own order. Blurring the boundaries between myth, mysticism, and the grim realities of our world, House of Bone and Rain is a harrowing coming-of-age story, a doomed tale of devotion, the afterlife of violence, and what rolls in with the tide. Oh, okay. All right. So the way that is written up, it does give me chills. I feel like this will definitely be something that's original. I I think that we will definitely have some occultism going on. I'm not necessarily certain with that, but I hope that we do because I absolutely love that subgenre of horror. And this feels like it's going to be a good first book for me to read by this author. Before I move on to the Secret Santa books that were gifted to me, this is Middle of the Night by Riley Sager. And this is a signed copy. Like, I definitely lucked out here. Check it out. Too flippin' cool. I love it. Love it already. But I've never read this author before. I know that he receives a lot of online praise, and I feel like I've been missing out on him. I think he's more so categorized as thriller suspense, but to be honest, that genre can be frightening as well. And the book states, in the latest jaw-dropping thriller from New York Times best-selling author Riley Sager, a man must contend with the long-ago disappearance of his childhood best friend, and the dark secrets lurking just beyond the safe confines of his picture-perfect neighborhood. The worst thing to ever happen on Hemlock Circle occurred in Ethan Marsh's backyard. One July night, 10-year-old Ethan and his best friend and neighbor Billy fell asleep in a tent set up on a manicured lawn in a quiet, quaint New Jersey cul-de-sac. In the morning, Ethan woke up alone. During the night, someone had sliced the tent open with a knife and taken Billy. He was never seen again. 30 years later, Ethan has reluctantly returned to his childhood home. Plagued by bad dreams and insomnia, he begins to notice strange things happening in the middle of the night. Someone seems to be roaming the cul-de-sac at odd hours, and signs of Billy's presence keep appearing in Ethan's backyard. Is someone playing a cruel prank, or has Billy, long thought to be dead, somehow returned to Hemlock Circle? The mysterious occurrences prompt Ethan to investigate what really happened that night, a quest that reunites him with former friends and neighbors and leads him into the woods that surround Hemlock Circle. Woods where Billy claimed ghosts roamed, and where a mysterious institute does clandestine research on a crumbling estate. The closer Ethan gets to the truth, the more he realizes that no place, be it quiet forest or suburban street, is completely safe, and that the past has a way of haunting the present. Okay, this could be paranormal, but at the same time, it could be normal. And I am really interested to see exactly how everything turns out. It does really feel more suspense and thriller than anything else, but I do definitely enjoy the idea of it having paranormal elements. I think that this would be a good book to read in the summer, considering it takes place in July. Before I close out, I would like to show off a couple of books that were gifted to me by a Secret Santa and a book that was gifted to me by a good friend, all of which came by mail. And as far as the Secret Santa books are concerned, this is because I decided to join in on the event of Very Bookish Secret Santa 2024. And this is a part of the Facebook group known as Book Dragons, and they're also known as We Be Bookin' It, which I'll include a link to that Facebook group in the description section of this video. And it's just a fun page where you can join it, talk about books, and they don't have to be horror books. They can be any genre, and it's just a place where you post what you're reading or you ask for recommendations, and you just become a little bit more in with the book community. First up is the book You've Lost a Lot of Blood by Eric LaRocca. And I really don't know what to expect of this. As a matter of fact, it doesn't really have too much of a synopsis. It just says on the back, each precious thing I show you in this book is a holy relic from the night we both perished, the night when I combed you from my hair and watered the moon with your blood. That's very poetic. That's actually poetic and beautiful and gruesome all at the same time. So this seems like it will definitely be an experience. And another book I received from that same Secret Santa is a book I've wanted for quite some time. And this is William March's The Bad Seed. And again, this is a circumstance where I've seen the movie a million times. I've gone to the play before, but I've never actually read the book. And for those of you who are unfamiliar, it says, There's something special about 8-year-old Rhoda Penmark. With her carefully plaited hair and her sweet cotton dresses, she's the very picture of old-fashioned innocence. But when the neighborhood suffers a series of terrible accidents, her mother begins to wonder, why do bad things seem to happen when little Rhoda is around? Originally published in 1954, William March's final novel was an instant bestseller and a National Book Award finalist before it was adapted for the stage and made into the 1956 film. I feel like this will have horror elements, but primarily I believe this is just nothing more than a thriller suspense book, and I'm very excited to read that because, I mean, this is a classic. It's definitely something that people still talk about. As a matter of fact, our Playhouse put on the play of this a few years ago, and I really want to go on and knock this one off of my list. And last is a book that was gifted to me by my good online friend Brandy, and that is Two of a Kind by Christo Healy. She has really great taste in books, so I know if she mailed this to me, she really enjoyed it. And I am unfamiliar with this author and the book, so I really don't know what to expect. And I do know that Brandy does enjoy splatterpunk and extreme books, so this can easily fall into one of those categories. But it says, everyone knows about workplace drama. We all know that miserable guy that hates everyone because they're too blonde, too attractive, good at their job, well liked, and queer. But what if the guy was a serial killer? Things could get messy. What if the coworker he directed his anger towards that was too blonde, attractive, good at his job, well liked, and queer was also a serial killer? Things could get even messier, and they do. Gerald hates everything and everyone at the hospital where he works, especially Nurse Chadwick with his charisma and likability. Gerald knows he can't kill his coworker, or he could lose his ability to continue his hobby, doubling as the killer the world knows as the Skin Shaver. So he decides to target Chadwick's family instead, hoping to get Chadwick out of his life a different way. What he doesn't know is that Chadwick is also a serial killer. They're two of a kind, and they're about to butt heads in a brutal, gory, cuss-filled extravaganza full of torture and depravity. Warning, this is extreme horror. This book is not for everyone. Please read the trigger warning page and exclude yourself if it applies to you. Okay. All right. This is definitely going to be a kick in the ass. I love it. And oh my God, I love horror books like this. I have a very diverse taste. Like, I can go from enjoying less is more to something that's just balls to the wall, sick, and grotesque. So, yeah, those are the books that I received for this Christmas. I am really grateful to have received everything I did. I hope that people have enjoyed these two videos. And if you've read any of these books, please let me know what you think about them, but also at the same time, avoid spoilers because I want to try to be as new to these subjects as possible. But before I close out, I would just like to thank these amazing people for contributing to my Patreon account. As you can tell, some of the names listed here are creators, so be sure to check out their work. And if you would like to contribute to my Patreon account, I have a link available in the description section of this episode, where for $5 a month, I'll give you a shout out at the end of my videos. And if there is a certain profession you would like for me to tie to your name, just let me know and I'll do that. Also, I do have a $10 tier available, where for $10 a month, I'll still give you the shout out as you see here, but I do creepy photography on the side, so at the beginning of every month, I send out one of my creepy photos. From there, you can print it off and do whatever you like with it. So if you're able to do this, that's awesome. If not, no sweat. I just hope you return to this channel so we can continue to have a good time together. Also, if you would like to hit me up on social media, links to my Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, and Threads are all available in the description section of this episode. And if you have not subscribed to this channel, be sure to subscribe and click that notifications bell because I do have more videos and book reviews coming in the near future. So until we see each other again, I hope you have a great week and sweet nightmares.